That's right, folks. Coming up on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, we are going to discuss 10 key injuries that you need to know heading into Week 1 and how it's going to impact your fantasy leagues in 2023. Before we do, make sure you stay on the show. We're going to be breaking down the latest on Cooper Kupp, the former number 2 overall pick in my rankings, had to slip down. We're going to break it down with a very special guest today on our show. So right now, the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. And bringing in one of our brand new partners from SixScore.com, Taylor. You've probably heard of him a million times on SixScore's podcast with Pro Football Doc. Taylor, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Thank you for having me. This is a great partnership. We've been using your stuff for multiple sports, not just football, baseball too. So it's great to finally get involved and start talking some sports.
Yeah, so today's episode, listen, Taylor, I would love to have you on and talk about regular football, but you guys are our injury guys. So we have to bring you on to talk about your expertise, my friend. You're going to help us break down some 10 key scenarios today, 10 topics, not just players, but like the Jets backfield, for example. Before we get into all that, tell us about SixScore.com, what you got going on, what's new over there as well, what we can find, where we can find your content.
So just about me real quick. I mean, I met Pro Football Doc, you know him on Twitter. We were at the San Diego Tribune together. I know you're a fellow San Diego guy. We met together. We were doing a little bit of writing, saw a little bit different angle, started the site. It was a different name. Now it's SixScore.com. We have data. We have insights that are awesome. People like Njigba, the second day they get injured on the field, you can go to our site. You get live action information. We have sick picks as well. All this injury angles people are using for daily fantasy, gambling. We help with that too. So all that stuff's on the site. We're having more stuff behind the paywall, field views, everything. So follow us at SixScore.com. Go to Twitter. Everything's there. Lots of injuries are happening, right? Lots of stuff going on.
It is truly one of the very few things you need to follow for fantasy sports. Pro Football Doc, what he does, what SixScore.com does. I caught on to you guys a few years ago, and I've been obsessed. I wrote up injury stuff last year because of you guys. I love what you do. I talk about SixScore every Sunday live. We do our Sunday live start sit show, and we talk about injuries, and we bring up SixScore.com. So any one of our followers, make sure you go over there right now. It is literally can change your life. They also have sick picks, which is up behind. Make sure you go check that out as well. I'm very excited to try that out this year. Get some injury data to help me with some player props. I love it. I love every second of it. I feel like it's a cheat code. It's going to be awesome. All right, so today we're going to talk about 10 key injuries that we need to know heading into the season. Obviously, this weekend is a big draft weekend too. So if you're watching this before you draft, this could really help you with ADP stuff. But a lot of this stuff might be impactful for week 1, 2 start sit questions. So you can use it any way you want if you already drafted. The first one, of course, we're going to talk about today is the Jets running back situation between Breece Hall and also Dalvin Cook. Now, sharing that backfield, both guys dealing with an injury. Breece Hall with the ACL, and of course, Dalvin Cook with the shoulder. What's the latest on these two guys and your thought process on their injuries for this season?
So I'll start with Hall. So he had the ACL injury last year. He's a fantasy darling, right? We love watching him play. He's a very great player. Week 7 injury, that's a little, it's not as deep into the season, but that's something we need to watch because he wasn't off PUP until much recently, right? So they did just sign Dalvin Cook, so we'll go into a little bit. But we have him at 65 right now, which means he's probably going to have a 65% output than he would normally. So if he's going to have 1,000 yards, you would think he's going to have 650 this year. So we have a lot of, he's been falling down the rankings. If he would have done an underdog or any big contest early in the year, he would have been a top 10 running back, and now he's fallen. So there might be little issues there. But now you have Dalvin Cook, right? So he had the shoulder injury. We have him at 92, though. We think this is a big deal for him to be there because that's signifying that Hall's not 100%, right? He's running very, very well in a straight line, but that's something you can do immediately off an ACL injury. Cutting and everything, like he's already said, he's worried about cutting. So that's hard to do as a running back, right? So Cook's going to be there. Not worried about the shoulder surgery. He's had that issues before. He's had issues where it's popped out and he's missed a couple games. But if Hall's not going to be 100% like we think, it's going to be Cooked for them at least the first half of the season.
So right now we have on Razzball.com, the latest ADP is up. We have Breece Hall at ADP 42. I'm assuming that's a sell for you based on what you just told us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. My drafts personally, I'm not touching Hall. There's a certain point, like we'll talk about players later, that they might fall to a point that you might need to get them. But I just don't think you're going to get enough with him, and especially with Cook there.
Now, Dalvin Cook is ADP 77, so that's 7th round ADP. Are you taking him there?
Yeah, I would take him there. There's a chance he might, if you don't have any running backs, maybe go 6, because he's going to get majority. This isn't like I'm going to split carries with Hall. There's at least the first weeks 1, 2, 3, all the way to maybe 8 that he's getting 20 carries and Hall gets maybe 10. Like there's not going to be a point where you're getting max amount of Hall opportunities till later in the season.
So here's how do I apply it. Some insight for everybody about how I look at this stuff. So Taylor just broke down the 6 score, 65 for Breece Hall. Last season, Breece Hall averaged 16.7 PPR points per game. If you just do 65% of that, that's 11.7 PPR points per game. That would have been RB 25. That's 6th round value. And I think if you told Taylor that Breece Hall is going in the 6th, he might say he would buy him potentially. Is that correct?
Yeah, if he's fallen to a certain point, if you have a good enough team and you can stash him for later this season, you're going to get Breece Hall games later in the season. It's just it's not going to be the first weeks of the season.
Just to give some long-term upside outlook, in the 3 seasons that Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Jones were together in Green Bay, the running backs as the top 2 duo, so Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, averaged 28 PPR points per game as a duo. So if you just split that down the middle, the second half, these guys could be looking around 14 PPR points per game. That's like top high-end RB2 numbers. So if Hall falls to the 6 and where you're getting Cook now, I do like that a lot. Let's jump down to number 2. It's Treylon Burks, and please only say nice things because I'm very high on him this year. So 6score.com has him at 87, which sounds pretty good. So talk to us a little bit about his injury right now, coming off that LCL sprain, I believe, on August 16th.
Yes, yeah, August 16th LCL sprain. We have no issues with that. It happened early enough. It was very minor. He's already taken off a little bit. He's returned to practice already, I believe. I've seen a little bit of video. We're not concerned with him week 1. So good news for you. LCL sprain was the best outcome for that play too. It could have been a lot worse. The hyperextension that he suffered during that play. So it's all been good news for him. So sky's the limit for him. I'm on him too. I love Hopkins. His age, and he had that big knee injury last year as well. So I think Burks is a big buy this year.
So currently he's going at ADP 102. So based on his ADP alone, do you think he's justified at that spot based on the injury diagnosis heading into week 1?
Yeah, because I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to affect him this season. This is something that it's already being dealt with now. We have him 87 right now. It can jump to 93 by week 2, right? We just need to see what he can do live during the game. But just what we've seen from camp practices and stuff like that, it seems like it's a non-issue at the moment.
And that's great. And here's why we're optimistic at Razzball. If you look at Hopkins and Tim Kelly, new OC for the Titans, the last time they were together in 2019, the number 2 receiver that season was Will Fuller. And I know injury people must remember Will Fuller because he got hurt all the time. But if you look at the 9 full games that Will Fuller played that season, he averaged 7.6 targets per game alongside Hopkins with Tim Kelly as OC. If Burks could do something similar to that, I think he's going to crush that 102 ADP. Let's jump down to number 3. It's Jaxon Smith-Njigba. You got him at 6score24. The heart hurts when you see this. A left wrist fracture, but he is back on the field. It sounds like practicing a little bit, probably non-contact. Give us the insight on JSN's outlook for 2023.
Yeah, we expected maybe a little bit of an IR stint to start the year. We think he should be missing 4 games, and that's where we're leaning towards as well. The reason why the Seahawks aren't, they probably think there's a chance that he returns within the 4. That wouldn't be smart. It's good that he's out there because he's a rookie, right? So he's able to learn the offensive stuff. But just seeing the first play he had, he bobbled the first catch he had in the play. So that he's not taking full force off that wrist yet. That's not something he's not going to. He also has a brace. It's hard to play with a brace. I don't know if you've seen the last time someone plays wide receiver with a brace out on the field. It's not something that happens often. So 24 is definitely more of a week 1 score than his season outlook. I would do more maybe in the low 80s, maybe 79, because if he misses 4 games, then that you're missing key stats right there. But week 1, we don't see him playing. When he does come back, it is a reliable recovery. So I would say that when he comes back, you should see a fully effective Njigba, but he's a rookie, right? So he just also needs to jump in and learn everything as well. So that's going to be difficult too. But from an injury standpoint, We would lean a little bit more than 4 games, though, is the issue.
Fully Effective Njigba is a great band name. I like that.
Is.
That sounds pretty cool. So right now today, his ADP is 85. So he hasn't really fallen that much based on our last update, just one spot. So people are still taking him. Are you recommending people take him at 85?
I would maybe wait a little bit. I'm just worried because I don't think it's 4. I think it might be 5 to 6. And then they do have a bye, I believe, at 7, or 6, so he can return after. So there might be a chance he stays later anyways. So yeah, I don't know. There's got to be other things around there. That's someone that's not missing 4 games of stats.
Yeah, we also have him as a sell at that price on Razzball, and it really comes down to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are there. Like, this is an unprecedented situation. Rarely does a first-round pick get drafted, and then they also have 2 stud receivers still on the roster. We did look into it. There's 3 scenarios that come to mind. It's the 2018 Falcons when they drafted Calvin Ridley, when they had Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu. Cowboys in 2020 with Gallup and Cooper when they drafted CeeDee Lamb. In 2021, Bengals with Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins when they drafted Jamar Chase. The wide receiver 3 in all those scenarios averaged 11.1 PPR points per game. That's wide receiver 39. And I think a lot of us agree that JSN, probably his first year, will be the third option. So I view him as more of a high-end wide receiver 4 anyway. So the injury kind of makes me off him at that price as well. Let's jump down to number 4. It's Kyle Pitts. Poor Kyle Pitts. I feel like we're picking on him. He's been on our bus shows constantly. Now we have him a 6 score at 57. He's got the MCL sprain. Basically kind of, it sounds like he should be recovered. Maybe not. What's your thoughts on Kyle Pitts in 2023?
So the one thing about him, it wasn't MCL, but it was a multi-ligament MCL. So there's other stuff involved there. So that's something that is not as reliable recovery. It happened week 11. So that's a little bit later in the season as well. So he has a little bit catching up to do to get fully effective. We watched a video in preseason, when he caught the ball behind the back. I don't remember that. He doesn't look great still. He has such lofty expectations too. So it's hard to draft him at the point that he's at. I mean, this is third season. We got him at 57. You have there. I mean, we don't see this is not a good year for him. And it's nothing to do with his ability. Last year was his ability before he got injured, right? Like, that's why bust. Now it's more like you probably shouldn't touch him just because of injury. Like, there's so many other, you got Waller, you got Goddard, so you got other tight ends within that range that probably should be taken before him.
So right now today, his ADP is 66, but you just brought up a good point. He's going ahead of Goddard. But I guess the question is, let's say Goddard's off the board, Waller's off the board, and you're looking at, in the 6th round. Based on what you're seeing, would you take him at 66 if those other guys are gone? Or are you just full fade on him this season?
I think it's just a full fade. I mean, if anything, you might just take your strategy and just do a tight end late, do like a weird Tyler Higbee, get one of those rookies, Kincaid, Musgrove, Laporta, because it's just, I think any of those are going to have at least a couple better weeks than Pitts. I'm just worried that injury it's not a great injury for the tight end.
So I think the biggest thing based on our analysis, he's a full fade. I mean, it's ridiculous how low we have him. But just to give you some numbers to back up our analysis, last season, the one thing that we noticed with Marcus Mariota, they did not throw a lot. But Desmond Ridder did throw a little more. In each of his games, he threw 26 times. Kyle Pitts played 5 games last year when they threw the ball at least 26 times. He averaged 6.8 targets per game. If you just apply his career catch rate, yards per target, and touchdown rate, that's 10.2 PPR points per game. That's tight end 10. So he is way too high right now. So we agree with 6 score on this one. Fade Kyle Pitts. Let's jump down to Miles Sanders. 6 score 92. I like the optimism. The groin injury looks like he's going to be ready for week 1. Talk to us about Miles Sanders. Why you actually aren't worried about him in 2023.
So the good thing about it happened way early in the preseason. He's already been back at practice for a whole 7 days already. So it's just the one thing. It's just like Kupp dealt with it's the setbacks. Soft tissue injuries are an issue. Sanders is someone that's dealt with ankle and knee injuries a lot of his career over in the Eagles. He's on a new team now. I would fade him more for his situation more than the injury. I'm not worried about the injury. The groin is something that could be re-aggravated, but it's deep. It's not like a Jeudy or a Kupp that's like we're a week away. He's already been at practice for a week, and I think that's good. If we see a little bit of limited practice and stuff during the, leading up to week 1, we might drop him at least maybe to an 88, 89, but that's still something that I would still buy and play him week 1. So
I will say this with Miles Sanders right now, 62 is where his ADP is at. That's actually not too bad. That's like the 5-6 turn. His ADP hasn't risen because of the groin. I guess my question for you is, at the 62 overall ADP. It sounds like you're fading him anyway, but let's say, for example, you do go wide receiver heavy. Would that change your outlook on a player like Sanders, maybe in that early 6th round?
If you do have that strategy, I think Sanders is a good look. I think it's going to get volume. I'm worried about it just from a team standpoint. I don't know if the team's good enough for him to produce there, but from an injury standpoint, there's no issues with Sanders. If you are doing a wide receiver strategy like you just asked, I would take Sanders here if there's not other options there.
All right, this is the one thing I will say about Sanders. I actually have him like right next to ADP, so I am not like high or low. The reason why is I know obviously Frank Reich comes in and he has at least shown us that he'll lean on an early down runner. JT is obviously the upside case. We're not saying he's JT at all. But if you look at Marlon Mack prior to Jonathan Taylor in PPR points per game was the RB 14 and 24 the 2 seasons prior to his Achilles. I think he tore his Achilles, right? Marlon Mack?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So prior to that, there was some production there. So I think there's a good chance you could get low-end RB2 numbers. So I think that the ADP fits. So I'm going to call this one a push. All right. So that's okay. We can have a couple of ties in here. Not a big deal at all. Let's jump down to number 6. It's Terry McLaurin. McLaurin's 6 score right now is a 45. He is coming off a right turf toe injury heading into this season. So what's your thoughts about McLaurin? His 6 score is very low for week 1, but do you see a more justified outlook long-term?
Yeah, from an early season, we have serious concerns. The pro football docs that are on 6score.com, 45 is might be for the first couple weeks of the season. It happened Monday, August 21st. That's too close to the season for him to be fully effective week 1. They've already kind of put little pointers out in the media saying like there's not optimism that he's going to be there suited up. So that fits our analysis. It is a moderate grade, which is something that he could push himself into playing week 1. It's not a severe right toe injury, turf toe injury. But if you are a player playing DFS, anything, I would leave him on your bench right now. But from a drafting standpoint, I think if he falls to a certain point, you should grab him because there is going to be at least 2 to 3 weeks where he's not going to be Terry McLaurin, but there's going to be 14, that he is. So I wouldn't fade him too hard with this injury, but you're not going to get what you want first couple weeks.
So he's right now going 55th overall. It sounds like we're probably not there on him right now based on what we're seeing. But I guess a better question based on your response is, would you take Deontay Johnson over McLaurin right now?
Yeah, I think you would. I think we're high in Steelers in general. The Steelers at our 6score.com, they have no injuries that have significance on both sides of the ball. But so Johnson, he looks like that could be a good season for him. Pickens as well. So yeah, Johnson I would pick over McLaurin right now.
What about Christian Kirk? Would you take a player like that over McLaurin?
Christian Kirk is interesting because I don't know really about Ridley. I have concerns that you haven't played almost 2 years. So are you going to be the Calvin Ridley that I saw with Matt Ryan? Or Christian Kirk last year looked really good with Lawrence. So I don't see them going away from that. But Kirk is hard because McLaurin's the one. There's not much. I know Dotson's there, but it's hard to take Kirk over McLaurin. But it's a conversation, I'd say.
Based on what your reaction is, I think it sounds like probably let him fall to the 6-7 turn, and that's where McLaurin starts becoming a value again. So that's our advice. I think that's probably our best advice here.
Fall. Yeah, let him fall.
Let him fall a little bit, but not too much. Catch him at the 6-7 turn, but don't draft him at 55. Here's a quick snippet about McLaurin's outlook. When I've been talking all off season long, I've talked about Eric Bieniemy coming over as OC. And I think a lot of us are excited because of what he did with Patrick Mahomes. However, can I just pump the brakes and say Sam Howell is not going to be Patrick Mahomes? I think that's a reasonable, take to have.
Pretty reasonable.
Pretty reasonable. I do think Sam Howell could be Alex Smith, though. If you remember, prior to a player like Patrick Mahomes, for 5 seasons, the Chiefs had Alex Smith. The 17-game pace for Alex Smith, those 5 seasons, was 3,900 passing yards and 23 touchdowns. If you give Terry McLaurin a 25% share of that, which I think is optimistic, but let's say McLaurin is a stud, that's 12.3 PPR points per game based on the numbers. And so that's low-end wide receiver 3. So I do have a little bit of hesitation at 55, but I think the injury has now gotten me interested because if he ends up falling to around 6-7, I do think he actually is a buy there, even with the injury, because I think back end of the season, you're going to get some reliable wide receiver 3 weeks. All right, let's jump down to number 7. It's Jerry Jeudy. Now, Taylor, we talked pre-show. We both were really high on Jerry Jeudy, so let's just try to be optimistic if we can.
We're upset right now. We're upset. We're upset right now. Yeah.
That SIC score 36 breaks my heart. It's a long weekend. It's Labor Day weekend, and now I got to deal with it with this. This is ridiculous. Hamstring on 824. That's alarming. He's starting to slip. His ADP right now is falling. But what's your thoughts about Jerry Jeudy's outlook for 2023?
The biggest issue is the timing of it. Like you said, 824 is, like we said, that's just too close to the season. Hamstring needs a couple weeks. You saw with Kupp, if what you sit out for a couple weeks, and right when you start ramping up, when the season's coming up, things can happen, right? So you haven't heard any bad stuff like we have with the latter. But Jeudy, there's some issues. I saw Schefter talking about it. He thinks they're leaning toward a 6 to 8 week injury, which would be devastating to Jeudy's outlook this year. We don't know that. We don't think it's as that bad. It was it could be a couple weeks still. So you're getting at least week 4 where you're getting proper Jeudy, which is frustrating, right? But we have him at 36 right now. I don't know if he's a sell yet because I'm so high on him. But like you said, if he's slipping, there's a certain point they might be just bubble wrapping him too, which would be really awesome for us. If it's not 6 to 8, maybe they're just keeping him close. But they need to play it safe with him because there's a chance he could have a setback as well.
So right now, today he's going 61st overall. That's the 5-6 turned in a 12-team league. What's your thoughts on there in the early 6th round? Are you going to pull the trigger on him there?
I think even though we've seen enough, I don't know if I have enough information for it to be if we think it's long term or not. I'm still just worried about how close it is. He needs to still do a ramp up. It's like McLaurin.
You're on the clock, Taylor. You're on the clock. Are you pulling? All right,
I like him so much, though. The situation's good.
Yeah.
Tim Patrick's not there, right? He just got hurt. They have multiple wide receivers that are injured, so it's sky's the limit for him. But right now, it's scary situation, I'd say.
Yeah. What about Lockett versus Jeudy right now? Straight up.
What did you say? Sorry, it cut out.
Lockett versus Jeudy. Would you take Lockett now or Jeudy?
I might take Lockett right now because Lockett kind of ties into what we talked about before with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. He's taken a lot more targets than you thought than he was eventually going to have before. So it's Lockett right now, but might not be too many receivers that you're taking. You got to wait and see with this Jeudy situation, but there's a lot of stuff that's saying he should have a good year this year. So you might need to wait and see, but. I know we're both scared, but
yeah. Well, if you look at my rankings, my latest ones that I dropped today, actually, I still have him in the 50s. And the reason why is if you just look at the games last season where he played 50% of the snaps with Russ, that's 10 games. He averaged 16 PPR points per game. That would have been wide receiver 12. We already saw that breakout last year with Russ. Now you bring in Sean Payton, who, by the way, when you think about it, who's the best receivers with Sean Payton? It's Michael Thomas and also Marquise Colston. These guys would kind of play hybrid slot roles. So that's what Jeudy plays. And I think it's just too perfect. And then you look at Russ's best receivers, Tyler Lockett, and then he also had Doug Baldwin, primary slot guys. So I don't know. I just have really good feeling about it. I just think that we have to be cautious on him. But I think at this new ADP, I'm buying all day long. Let's jump down to number 8. It's Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow's 6 score just kind of shows after that calf injury, he returned to practice, it looks like just a few days ago on 8:30. 6 score, 887. What's your thoughts about Joe Burrow's outlook in 2023?
Great timing, right? That happened very early. I know the cart scared people, but people think about cart and training camp. People don't realize it's farther away to get to the room to evaluate them than it is at the stadium. Stadium, they can walk them through, get them through, but it's just safety measures. It's just getting them down there. The calf injury, we weren't concerned about. He already had a compression sleeve on already, so there was a little bit of an issue before the actual pull. He's 87 right now. The only thing we're worried about week 1 is a little bit of his mobility, but he's not like a Jalen Hurts. He's not a Kyler Murray. We're not expecting, Justin Fields. We're not expecting multiple rushing yards from him, but he's definitely going to have a little bit of an issue moving around in the pocket. But 87 is still fine. You should still be buying Burrow. I don't know. You're going to tell the numbers, but I would assume he shouldn't have fell too much. The second he returned to practice, from the odds standpoint, they already got a point in the favor of the Bengals. I think it's 2.5 now against the Browns. So everything's kind of starting to fall in line that Burrow's going to be okay. It's just like if you see a rushing prop up on DraftKings or any other big book, you might go under that because I don't think Burrow's rushing at all week 1. But 87, you should still be getting him, still trying to get as much of the Bengals offense as you can.
So his current ADP is 40. And so people are still aggressively drafting him.
Right.
He is going behind Lamar Jackson, but ahead of Justin Herbert and Fields. What's your thoughts on that situation? Are you going to take a guy like Herbert or Fields and Lamar over Burrow? Are you, because of what you know with the injury, or are you going to fade all those guys and take Burrow because you're confident?
From an injury standpoint, you're still taking Burrow if you're high on Burrow. There should be nothing that's stopping you from. If you're a Herbert guy, you're going to take Herbert anyways. So there's nothing issue there, right? I'm saying that because I might be. But from a standpoint there, injury, that calf should not worry you. He's going to be throwing like crazy. He's got the offense. The one injury that might be a concern is the offensive line. Lyle Collins is on PUP. So they're going to have Jonah Williams switch over there. It's not always easy going left to right. I know it sounds like you put on a paper to go, you go easy, but it's not. So he's going to have to do that a little bit. So that might be a double whammy week 1, with the right tackle and his calf injury. But just from an injury standpoint, you should be still locking in and drafting Burrow.
I hope Orlando Brown solidifies that left tackle spot. And here's why. I was really high on Joe Burrow. I have him as my QB4. I put him behind. I had him as my QB4. I flipped him with Justin Fields. I have those guys 4 or 5.
Yep.
And here's why. The 9 games that he played last season with Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. Remember, Chase missed some games. T. Higgins was in and out of the lineup. So there was only 9 games where all 3 of those guys played at least 50% of the snaps. He averaged 29 points per game in 6 points per passing touchdown leagues. That's like Allen and Mahomes numbers, folks. That is elite numbers. So if you don't have any hesitation, I shouldn't have any hesitation. I might have to consider putting him back ahead of Fields. I don't know. I can't make these decisions this early. But I do love the advice. I'm excited. I think you probably should take the over on his passing yards maybe week 1 if you feel that confident about it.
There's value. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's jump down to number 9. It's the running back ACL injuries. I just want to cover really quick. The first guy is Javonte Williams. His 6 score is 47. He's coming off a multi-ligament knee injury, I believe. And so what's your thoughts about Javonte Williams heading into 2023?
It's great. You have this. I'm going to ruin it. You got Dobbins as the next guy. They had the same exact injury, kind of. It's that multi-ligament is not good. It's Dobbins. That was one of our biggest fades last year. We put props out, everything, because you can't be effective your first year off that. He had a great start to his year. He looks like he's going to be a good power back, but it's just right now he's at camp, but it's not a good year. It's not going to be a good year for him. That's why they got Samaj Perine, who I think is a big buy, because I don't think Williams is going to get 10 carries for majority of the games this year. 47, like we said, if he's 1,000-yard runner this year, 47%, you're only getting 470 yards from him. So that's a big, huge drop off, right? Next year is definitely Williams. So if you're going dynasty, different angles, Williams is a huge buy next year, because second year off ACL is always a skyrocket up in the rankings and stuff like that. So, but this year that's a full fade. That might be one of the biggest avoids this year for us at sixscore.com.
His current ADP is 67. So that is still like 6th round ish, that's middle of the 6th round. Yeah. That's too high for you. So I guess the question is for us that we want to know is is there a point where Javonte falls? Let's say he falls. Let's say you have a savvy league, love 6 score. All 12 teams love 6 score. They're all faded Javonte. Is there a point in the draft where it's like 8th round, 9th round, where you would even say, you know what, at that point we could take him, or because of the low 6 score, it's just completely hands off, just go a different direction?
I just wouldn't. You shouldn't have. You should not take him at all. I mean, if you have a chance, you should grab Perine late. If your strategy involves Williams, you need to change that draft strategy completely. It's just him and Hall are like 2 running backs that I feel like are a little bit higher than they should be in these rankings, and they might be something that you might just want to completely avoid entirely. That offense too, it's a new offense too, right? So he's already learning that. There's a lot of factors that are going into a bad season for Javonte Williams.
Just to give everybody some kind of insight here, when you guys talk about this a lot too, if you look at the year after these injuries, we talk about Barkley and Dalvin Cook are probably the biggest workhorses that came back the next year that saw a production dip recently. Barkley averaged 11.6 PPR points per game. Dalvin Cook was at 14.2. He didn't meet his ADP, but 14.2 is not too bad. Dobbins last year, 10.2. If you just average those kind of running backs out, that's about RB 26. Currently, today's going at RB 23. I personally have him as an 8th round pick, so I'm 2 rounds later. I am fading him, but I do think there is a scenario where maybe he could give you like RB3 flex numbers over the second half of the season, because this guy is probably closer to an RB1 when healthy. So I do agree that he's a fade. I do think that I still have, but I might actually flip based on this conversation. I'm going to flip P. Ryan ahead of him just to be safe, just so I know I get that better back for the season. All right, let's jump down to J.K. Dobbins because it's perfect segue to this player. It seems like it's lingering now, right? The injury just multi-ligament. Last year he came back. People were high on him. He didn't, meet expectations. Your 6 score is a lot higher this year at 80. So it does seem like you have some optimism about him. What's your outlook on J.K. Dobbins?
This is a good test case for Williams too, because this is going to be Williams next year. Like the 80 looks nice compared to what is last year, but it might be closer to his baseline, which is baseline for him should be like 92, 94, right? So the knee injury is something that I think is always going to be there. Multi-ligament is not something that just goes away. He's going to be dealing with it. He was missing a little bit of a camp. That seemed like more contractual than his knee, but he's gonna be a guy that you're gonna see do not practice every Wednesday. He's gonna have vet rest, practice days. He's not the same anymore that he was at Ohio State. The one thing about, I think it's a second year off ACL. So the one thing is though, that's skyrocket stats for any running back, any, wide receivers, especially. So where he's going, there's a point that it might be nice to have him as a running back 3, like, cause he's still he's getting RB1 opportunities, right? Gus Edwards is another one too. Mention him. He's coming off the ACL as well. He can also provide value too in the second year off it, but 80 is a good number comparative to last year, but it's something that might be closer to his final number, which isn't great.
So Dobbins right now is going 56th overall. So that's like right in the middle of that 5th round. Based on this 6 score, basically what you know about him, are you buying him in the 5th round?
Yeah, Dobbins, yeah. And then if you see him drop more, get him even more. I've been getting Dobbins earlier in the offseason, like at like 9, 7, 8. Like he is dropping, but he has RB1. He has opportunities. It looks like a better offense. It looks like Ronnie Stanley is better health with that ankle. They're more improved on the wide receiver front. So it just looks like a better situation for him.
So for Dobbins, we have him kind of as a sell in the 5th round, mostly because, like, historically speaking, he's played 16 games when he was healthy, by the way, before the injuries for the most part, but there was some games in 2022 where he started playing a little bit more. But in 16 games in his career, when he played 40% of the snaps, he averages 11.6 PPR points per game. That would have been RB 26 last season. His ADP right now is 19. I think Gus Edwards still involved. This is a new offense too with Todd Monken as well. That's not going to be as run focused. So I do think he's a good RB3 flex player, but at RB19, you're looking at him to be your solid RB2, and just historically, he hasn't done it. So I just think if you factor in there is lingering concerns about the knee, I personally won't take him in round 5, but if he does fall to 6, 7, that's where I start getting interested in J.K. Dobbins. Let's go to the last one, folks. We promised you we'd cover it. It's Cooper Kupp. Pour one out for Cooper Kupp, folks. I mean, at this point, a setback just a handful of days before the season starts. Terrible. I mean, now his 6 score is 27, which is like the lowest score we've had on the show other than JSN. What's going on with Cooper Kupp? Should we be taking him at all in drafts? What's your thought process for him in 2023?
I apologize for the noise. They chose my window for the perfect time. Cooper Kupp, we already had issues with Stafford because of his back injury. We thought if Stafford was going to miss games, Cooper Kupp wasn't going to be effective with a Stenson Bennett type character at quarterback. Now you have the hamstring injury. It happened middle of August, so it's a decent time, but the setback is a huge issue. That's always going to be an issue when you have a soft tissue muscle injury, just like Jeudy. The setback is something that he needs to complete. It's like you're starting, you go 0, 1, 2, and then you're going back to 0 again. So there's definitely a chance he's missing week 1. This is also, I would keep him bubble wrapped like Jeudy until he's 120% ready, right? They don't really have much to play for this year too, right? The Rams have like a 6.5 win total. So they're not trying to win as much as they were in years past. So they're going to wait until he's 100% ready to go. So that could be 3 weeks. The setback is not good. You don't know how severe the setback is. There's no video. We do really well when we see video and we can analyze that. But from just like contextual, seeing all the media reports, it's not good news for Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, this is a tough one because, I was very aggressive on him just over the last, year and a half before his injury last year. The guy was averaging 25 fantasy points per game, which is unheard of numbers. Like only him and CMC have done that over the last decade. So I think now that his setback happens, the question is like, where do we take him, right? I think his ADP right now at 7 is too early. We haven't gotten the full look yet. I wonder if at the 1-2 turn, second round pick, like where are you feeling comfortable knowing his upside? Where would you feel comfortable taking Kupp if he might have a 3-week ramp up? Is it 2-3 turn now? How far is he falling for you?
It's definitely the 2-3. I have my rankings. I have him at 10. I think I would take 9 running wide receivers over him. I think it's because even when he does come back, there's a chance he re-aggravates it again. There's always a setback opportunities. So he's not going to be 100% when he returns. Like you said, the setback is going to take a couple weeks, and it's already we're at week 1 now. So that's an issue for his ADP. He should be falling into the second, third round. There should be no more round 1 Cooper Kupp.
I don't even have good numbers for this one. Like I have nothing. Like I just like poo. It's like we wrote these show notes like earlier in the week that the setback happens. It's like it is what it is. Like it's tough. I think right now I have him at 12th overall. I'm probably going to bump him below Chris Olave. Probably get him closer to that 2-3 turn. Then it's like T. Higgins, Keenan Allen type players where those guys will not be top. They probably can't be wide receiver ones. Maybe Keenan Allen, but T. Higgins is like consistently the wide receiver 13. So I think at this point, based on what you said, it might make sense to like take those Wilsons and Olaves and Waddles, guys that could be legit wide receiver ones this season. But then you take Kupp, who when healthy could be an elite guy, baking in some of that injury risk. All right, Taylor, before we close out the show, is there any, like, I guess my question is for you, either this is your chance to like bring anything up, a player we haven't discussed that you want to bring up to the viewers, or is there a player we discussed that today on the show that you're like, hey, fade him now, buy later, we'd like him in the second. This is your chance to talk about anything you want before we close out the show.
The big thing is I would target these backup running backs to the 2 people we talked about, Breece Hall and Javonte Williams. They're going too high. I've seen it all offseason. Even earlier, they were going even way too much. Dalvin Cook is going to have a better year, and so is Samaj Prime. So I just don't see value in getting those. So we talked about them earlier. Just keep in mind, don't draft those guys at the ADP they are at now, is what I would say.
All right. Well, first off, I want to thank you for joining the show today. This was super fun, very insightful. I think right before the season starts, you could take this advice if you have a draft this weekend and use it for drafts, but then also take this advice and use it for week 1. Even if you drafted guys like Kupp and Breece Hall, we're not saying drop them, but we are saying maybe you put them on the bench for week 1, see how they perform, put in another guy in that flex spot that could really help you win your first week. I also want to make sure to promote sixscore.com and Taylor. You guys do amazing work over there. Taylor, before we close the show, one more time, tell the people where they can find your content and everything for sixscore.com.
You go to sixscore.com. There, you go what's called our Twitter. It's sixscore. And you go there and follow us there. We have data, insights, and we have sick picks coming, like you said. Just go there, sixscore.com. Everything's there for injury wise.
Love it. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. Thank you for joining me once again on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Make sure you go subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. We have the Sunday Live Start Sit Show starting. We're super excited about that next week. Also, make sure you jump over to TikTok and IG. And, of course, make sure you jump over to Razzball.com. My latest Top 150 out. Go see me emotionally cry as I drop Cooper Kupp all the way down into the late second round. Super excited about that. Thank you for joining once again, Taylor. We are out of here, folks.